Imagine a money-making secret, one that Napoleon Hill claimed came straight from Andrew Carnegie himself.
Yeah, and not just any secret. Hill presented it as this powerful formula, potent enough to, well, not just build fortunes.
Right, but also things like bringing harmony into your home, boosting your income, even apparently shaping political careers.
It's pitched as this universal key, isn't it, for achieving pretty much any definite goal you set your mind to.
Exactly. And what's really interesting is how Hill developed this. He didn't just, dream it up.
No, not at all. He spent, what was it, over 20 years researching it, collaborating with Carnegie, analyzing hundreds of successful people.
Over 500, apparently. Extremely wealthy individuals. He really frames it as a distillation of their success, a proven method.
So today we're doing a deep dive into Napoleon Hill's classic, Think and Grow Rich. We're pulling out excerpts, looking at the core ideas.
Yeah, our mission is basically to unpack this whole philosophy, find the most surprising bits, the practical tools, and see, how these principles might still click for you today.
We'll get into the mental side, the practical steps he insists on for turning desire into reality. Things like beating procrastination, harnessing these unseen forces he talks about. It's fascinating stuff.
Definitely. So let's jump right in. At the absolute core is this money-making secret from Carnegie, the big idea.
It's this concept of transmutation, that a really intense desire, if you focus it right, can literally transform or transmute into its physical equivalent.
It sounds a bit like magic, almost alchemical.
It does, but Hill presents it as a direct, practical process. And crucially, not just for money. He gives examples like creating family harmony, or even a clergyman massively increasing his income.
And he was pretty confident about it. He claimed he never knew anyone who really committed to using this secret and didn't achieve significant success.
Which brings us to those famous 6 steps. They seem simple on the surface, but there's a lot packed in there.
Okay, let's quickly run through them. Maybe you can highlight why they're trickier than they look. First, he says, fix the exact amount of money you want.
Right. Not just plenty or a lot. Specificity is absolutely key. It makes the goal concrete.
Okay. Second, determine exactly what you intend to give in return.
Ah, yes. The reciprocity part. You don't get something for nothing. What's the value you're bringing? What's the exchange?
Makes sense. Third, set a definite date, a deadline.
Crucial for creating urgency. It stops it from being just a vague, someday wish.
Fourth, create a definite plan to get there, and this seems important, begin at once.
Yes. Begin at once, whether you feel ready or not. That immediate action is paramount. No waiting for the perfect moment.
Fifth step, write it all down. A clear, concise statement amount, what you'll give, the date, the plan.
Get it out of your head and onto paper. Makes it real.
And the final step, number 6, this one feels a bit different.
Read that statement aloud twice a day, morning and night. And here's the kicker. Read it with full belief, seeing and feeling yourself already having the money. That's engaging the subconscious.
And apparently, Thomas Edison himself reviewed and approved these exact steps, not just for money, but for any goal.
That's what Hill claims, yeah. Adds some weight to it, doesn't it?
It really does. And Hill makes this huge distinction between just wanting something and having a burning desire.
Oh, absolutely. He describes it as an all-consuming obsession. Something so strong, it literally compels you to act. Makes sitting still impossible.
Like that story of Edwin C. Barnes wanting to work with Edison.
Exactly. The guy literally hops a freight train, penniless, doesn't even know Edison personally, just shows up. Why? Because he had this keen, pulsating desire.
And Hill's point is, Barnes was determined to remain ready until he got that which he was seeking. He didn't just hope, he positioned himself and persisted. And it worked.
That's the level of intensity Hill's talking about. Or think about Marshall Field after the Great Chicago Fire.
Right. His store burns down. Everyone else is maybe thinking of leaving.
And Field supposedly stands there amid the ruins and declares he'll build the world's greatest store right there, no matter how many times it may burn down.
Yeah.
That's not just optimism. Hill calls it a burning desire.
Wow. So for you listening, Hill's message is pretty clear. Focusing that intense, almost obsessive desire onto a single, definite major purpose. That's the real starting point, the catalyst.
Definitely. So if desire is the fuel and the specific goal is the destination, what's next? Hill says it's mastering procrastination, which he links directly to making decisions.
Ah, decision.
Yeah.
Chapter 8, right. He points out how common it is to just quit, especially when you hit a setback, what he calls temporary defeat.
Exactly. And he contrasts that with successful people who he says have the habit of making decisions promptly and definitely. No wishy-washiness.
That reminds me of the R.U. Darby story, the 3 feet from gold one.
Oh, yeah, classic. He and his uncle
Yeah.
give up mining literally 3 feet away from a massive gold vein because they hit a tough spot and got discouraged by expert advice.
Such a painful lesson. But the powerful part is how Darby turned it around later.
Right. He went into life insurance, and because of that mining failure, he apparently made a vow to himself. When a prospect said no, he'd remember he stopped 3 feet from gold and he wouldn't quit. He learned that every failure brings with it the seed of an equivalent success.
He really internalized it. And didn't he also learn from that persistent little girl?
Yeah, the 50-cent lesson. His uncle tried to shoo away this little girl selling something, kept saying no, but she just wouldn't leave until she got her 50 cents. Darby watched it happen and realized, no doesn't always mean no. Persistence pays off.
It's amazing how these small moments shape things. Hill even uses the Declaration of Independence as an example on a huge scale.
He does. He points to the 56 signers on July 4th, 1776. They made a massive, incredibly risky decision together, knowing they could be hanged for treason.
He calls them a mastermind group making this monumental decision.
And he argues that this collective, definite decision was the irresistible power that came before George Washington's eventual military victories. It ties together desire, decision, faith, persistence, the mastermind, all of it.
So decision is crucial. And hand in hand with that goes persistence.
Absolutely. Chapter 9. Hill calls persistence essential for that transmutation process we talked about. It's driven by the power of will.
And he connects the strength of your desire to your level of persistence, right?
Directly. Weak desires mean weak results, weak persistence. If you lack persistence, his advice is basically build a stronger fire under your desires. Make that why more powerful. He believed fortunes gravitate to minds that are truly prepared, mentally, to attract them.
You see that resilience in some of the examples he gives, like Fannie Hurst.
Oh, yeah. 36 rejection slips from the Saturday Evening Post before she finally broke through. Imagine getting 36 no's.
Or W.C. Fields, already in his 60s, vaudeville dying out.
And he offers to work in movies for free, even after getting injured, just to get a foot in the door, because he knew persistence would eventually lead to breaks.
And Marie Dressler, too, finding huge success quite late in life, around 60.
Yeah, by just relentlessly going after opportunities. These are people who gave up easily.
So how do you actually develop that kind of persistence? Hill lays out 4 steps.
First, a definite purpose, backed by that burning desire we keep mentioning. Got to know what you want and want it badly.
Okay.
Second, a definite plan, but crucially expressed in continuous action. Keep moving forward.
Third, this one sounds tough.
It is. A mind closed tightly against all negative and discouraging influences. That includes negative self-talk, but also discouraging words from friends, relatives, the world.
Wow. And fourth,
A harmonious mastermind alliance, surrounding yourself with supportive people who encourage your persistence.
and conversely, what weakens persistence? What makes people quit?
Well, he lists a bunch of things. Failure to really define what you want is a big one. Procrastination, obviously. Fear of criticism is huge, worrying what others will think.
Giving up at the first sign of trouble.
Exactly. Lack of clear, organized plans. Basically anything that dampens that burning desire or interrupts consistent action.
So takeaway for you listening is pretty powerful. If your first plan fails, don't abandon the goal.
Right. Replace the plan. If the new plan fails, replace that one. Keep adapting and iterating until you find what works. It really hammers home his belief that no man is ever whipped until he quitteth in his own mind.
It's about transforming those setbacks, seeing them not as dead ends, but as maybe detours that require a new plan.
Precisely. Embrace the decision. Cultivate the persistence.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly and talk about harnessing the mind itself. Starting with imagination. Hill calls it the workshop of the mind.
Yeah, and he breaks it down into 2 types. First, synthetic imagination.
Which is?
Basically, arranging old ideas, concepts, or plans into new combinations, taking existing building blocks and putting them together differently, like innovation maybe.
Okay, so using what's already known, what's the second type?
That's creative imagination. This is the more mysterious one. Hill describes it as the faculty that connects directly with infinite intelligence. It's where hunches, inspirations, brand new ideas come from.
Like those aha moments.
Exactly. And he believed it functions best when your conscious mind is vibrating at a high rate, usually simulated by, you guessed it, strong desire.
He uses Coca-Cola as an example here, doesn't he?
He does. Asa Candler buys this secret formula in an old kettle for like $500.
Pocket change, really, considering what happened next.
Right. But Hill argues the real magic ingredient wasn't just the sort formula. It was Candler's imagination, seeing the massive potential the empire it could become. It led Hill to say, truly, thoughts are things. A powerful idea, well managed, can create incredible value.
Which leads nicely into another huge concept, the power of the mastermind.
Ah, yes, the mastermind. His definition is key. Coordination of knowledge and effort in a spirit of harmony between two or more people for the attainment of a definite purpose.
So teamwork, basically. But it sounds like more than just dividing up tasks.
Oh, much more. He talks about an economic benefit, pooling resources and knowledge, but also a psychic one. The idea is that when minds coordinate harmoniously, they create this increased thought energy, like a mental synergy that benefits everyone in the group.
Like a think tank amplifying everyone's ideas. He gives some big examples.
Huge ones. Andrew Carnegie credited his entire fortune to his mastermind group, which had about 50 people.
50. Wow.
And Henry Ford. Hill notes that Ford's really rapid progress started after he allied himself with minds like Edison, Harvey Firestone, John Burroughs, Luther Burbank. He believed Ford was absorbing their vibrations of thought.
Even Mahatma Gandhi is mentioned.
Yes, achieving stupendous power by getting over 200 million people to coordinate towards a definite purpose, Indian independence in harmony. It shows the scale this principle can operate on.
So, imagination harnessing collective brain power. What about knowledge itself? Specialized knowledge is another chapter.
Right, and his point here is crucial. Yes, you need organized, intelligently directed, specialized knowledge to build wealth. But that knowledge doesn't necessarily have to be all in your head. You can get it through your mastermind group, for instance.
This ties into his critique of traditional schooling, doesn't it?
It does. He points out the root of education is educo, meaning to draw out from within, not just stuff information in. And he highlights highly successful people with very little formal schooling, like Ford or Edison.
So it's not about diplomas necessarily, but about acquiring and using practical, specialized knowledge.
Exactly. Knowledge itself isn't power. Applied knowledge directed towards a definite goal is power. He talks about practical sources, your own experience, your mastermind group, colleges, libraries, specialized courses, home study. The key is application. He really bangs the drum for specialization.
And the book gets super practical when it talks about marketing personal services, especially for people starting out.
Very practical.
Yeah.
He notes this shift happening, the old employer-employee dynamic changing.
Yeah.
He says it's becoming more like a partnership, and ultimately, the public is the real employer you need to satisfy.
And he says the go-getter is being replaced by the go-giver. I like that. What does he mean?
It's about focusing on the value you provide, the service you render, rather than just what you can get, leading with contribution.
He shares a story about a guy named Stuart Austin Weir.
Yeah, during the Depression, he was a construction engineer, work dried up. So what did he do? He proactively went and got specialized knowledge to become a corporation lawyer, built a successful practice, apparently turning clients away, shows the power of adapting and upskilling.
And that other amazing story, the woman who helped her son get a job.
Oh, that one's brilliant. Her son finished college, couldn't find work. So she didn't just tell him to send out more resumes. She created this incredibly detailed, almost 50-page brief about him.
50 pages. What was in it?
Everything. His abilities, his schooling, background, references, and critically, a specific plan outlining exactly how he could be valuable in the specific position he wanted.
And it worked.
First interview, got the job at the salary he named. Hill's takeaway, doing a thing well never is trouble. It's about presenting yourself not just as a job applicant, but as a valuable solution provider.
So for you listening, the message is use your imagination, build your mastermind, get the specialized knowledge you need, either yourself or through others, and then market yourself or your service by focusing on the value you give.
That's a great summary. It's strategic.
Okay, let's go even deeper into the mind now. The subconscious mind. Hill calls it the connecting link.
Yes. He describes it as this field where every thought impulse gets classified and recorded, especially thoughts that are mixed with strong emotionalized thoughts.
So you can consciously plant your desires there, like with the 6th step earlier.
Exactly. That's the goal. But the catch is, it also absorbs negative thoughts, fears, doubts, whether you consciously put them there or not. It doesn't judge. It just records and acts on whatever dominates.
And this connects to his idea of the brain as a broadcasting station.
It does, yeah. Chapter 13. He uses this metaphor that your brain is constantly broadcasting your dominant emotionalized thoughts and also receiving thought vibrations from others. like a mental radio.
It's a wild idea. And the peak of all this, the apex of his philosophy, is the sixth sense.
Chapter 14. He presents this as something you develop only after mastering all the other principles. It's essentially the creative imagination fully awakened. Your receiving set for those flashes of insight, hunches, inspirations, a connection to infinite intelligence, as he puts it.
It sounds quite mystical.
It does. And he shares that very personal, maybe even strange practice. He had his invisible counselors.
Right. Tell us about that. He held imaginary meetings.
Yeah, nightly council meetings in his imagination with historical figures he admired. Emerson, Lincoln, Edison, Darwin, Napoleon, Ford, others.
What did he do in these meetings?
He'd address each one, asking for the specific knowledge or character trait he wanted from them, like asking Lincoln for a sense of justice, or Edison for his persistence.
Seriously. And he claimed they actually answered.
He claimed they took on distinct personalities in his mind and provided him with invaluable insights and ideas. He believed it fundamentally reshaped his own character. It's a fascinating, if unusual, technique for tapping into something deeper.
Definitely unusual. Now let's tackle a chapter that often raises eyebrows. The mystery of sex transmutation.
Ah, yes. Chapter 11. This one can be easily misunderstood. Hill starts by stating that the emotion of sex is the most powerful human desire, a huge source of energy.
Okay, most would agree with that, but then he talks about transmutation.
Right. He argues this powerful energy doesn't have to be expressed only physically. It can be consciously rechanneled or transmuted into other forms of creative effort, business, art, invention.
And doing this, he claims, can elevate someone to the level of genius.
That's the claim. By transmuting this energy, he believed you raise your rate of thought vibration, allowing you to access those higher sources of knowledge, like the creative imagination or infinite intelligence.
He also offers a theory on why major success often comes later in life, like after 40 or 50.
He does. It's a bit controversial. But he observed that many men, in his view, tend to dissipate this powerful sexual energy primarily through physical expression earlier in life. He suggests it's often only later, perhaps after 40, that they learn to harness and transmute it for broader creative achievement.
Interesting theory, and he uses the King Edward and Wallace Simpson story as an example. That seems like an odd fit.
It does at first glance. He frames their love story, which led Edward to abdicate the throne, as an astounding example of applied persistence in pursuing the object of their desire, in this case, love.
So showing how desire, even romantic desire, can be an incredibly powerful motivator driving huge decisions.
Exactly. He's equating that driving force of love with the kind of creative energy geniuses possess. It's about the power of desire, whatever its focus.
Okay. Now, finally, we need to face the negatives Hill warns about, the 6 ghosts of fear.
Yes, chapter 15. These, he says, are the root causes of so much failure, discouragement, procrastination, indecision. But he stresses they are nothing but ghosts. They exist only in our minds.
Yet they can be incredibly destructive, right? He blames the fear of poverty for helping cause the 1929 crash.
He does. He believed that collective fear gripped millions, paralyzed action, and created the very conditions people feared. Shows the tangible power of these mental ghosts.
Let's list the 6 he identifies. First, the fear of poverty,
which he calls the most destructive. Paralyzes reason, kills imagination, undermines self-reliance. Symptoms include indifference, doubt, worry, procrastination.
Second, the fear of criticism.
Also huge. Robs you of initiative, makes you afraid to be different or try new things, worrying constantly about what others think. He even gives a sad example of how it can lead parents to harm their kids by trying too hard to make them conform.
Third, the fear of ill health.
Often manifesting as hypochondria, he says, worrying yourself sick. The fear itself can create physical symptoms.
Fourth, fear of loss of love.
Often tied to jealousy, causes suspicion, erodes trust. He thought women were maybe more susceptible to this one.
Fifth, fear of old age.
Worrying about becoming useless, losing independence. Kills initiative, often linked to fear of poverty later in life, and fear of death.
And the 6th ghost, fear of death.
The great unknown. Often linked, he thought, to fear of punishment in an afterlife, or worry about leaving loved ones destitute. And then he adds a sort of bonus evil, doesn't he?
Yes. The 7th basic evil. Susceptibility to negative influences. He warns this is incredibly insidious, maybe worse than the fears themselves.
Because it's often subtle. It can come from other people, negative friends, relatives, news media, or just from your own negative mental habits. It slowly poisons your mindset.
So how do you fight back against these fears and negative influences?
Cultivate willpower, he says. Be aware of your own tendencies towards indifference or negativity. Critically, make a conscious effort to shut out discouraging voices and actively seek positive, uplifting influences. Build a mental fortress.
Ultimately, then, it all comes back to controlling your thoughts.
Absolutely. Hill states that man's ability to control his own thoughts is the most significant and inspiring fact known to man. It's our unique power, but it requires self-discipline and developing the habit of mind control.
And the most practical way to do that.
Keep your mind busy. Occupy it constantly with your definite purpose and the plans for achieving it. Don't leave mental space for fear and doubt to creep in.
He really drives this home when he lists those 57 famous alibis people use for failure.
Oh, yeah. All the excuses. I don't have enough education. I'm too old. I don't have time. It's not my fault. The odds are stacked against me.
He calls them children of one's own imagination.
Exactly. And fatal to success. His blunt conclusion is that the philosophy in his book makes every single one of those excuses obsolete. No more alibis.
So for you listening, this whole section is about recognizing these internal enemies, fear, negativity, excuses, and realizing you have the power to conquer them by consciously directing your thoughts and focusing relentlessly on your purpose.
It's a powerful call to take mental responsibility.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. From the foundational power of desire,
Sharpened by definite decision and unwavering persistence.
expanded through imagination and the collaborative energy of a mastermind,
Grounded in acquiring and applying specialized knowledge.
and ultimately protected by identifying and conquering those ghosts of fear and negative influences.
It's quite a comprehensive philosophy of achievement when you lay it all out.
It really is. And Hill leaves us with a stark warning, doesn't he, about time.
He does, that famous closing image. Life is a checkerboard, and the player opposite you is time. If you hesitate before moving or neglect to move promptly, your men will be wiped off the board by time. You are playing against a partner who will not tolerate indecision.
Wow. No pressure then. It really emphasizes that need for prompt action we talked about earlier.
Absolutely. Don't just think. Do.
So perhaps the final thought to leave you with is this. In today's world, which is full of distractions, noise, endless opinions, what is your definite purpose? What's that one thing you desire with burning intensity?
And following from that, what bold decision are you prepared to make today? And then pursue with relentless persistence, shutting out the ghosts and the negativity to turn that purpose into your reality.